Kids learn to walk, around first year, and learn to talk. I just learned this, 18 months or something like that. F2. I always, thought walk at 1, talk at 2, and I get a little amnesia about this because I only have 5 kids, and maybe that's why I have 5 kids. A little amnesia about what happens at the early ages, and so when do you think they start to know that they want to buy things or to purchase things or what money is? So I learned it's actually earlier than I thought it was because they can go, because we got that sign language thing, right? And so I looked it up in Wikipedia where all smart people find their information. And apparently around 5 is when kids, start to understand money and saving and so forth, which I happen to think is nonsense because I actually think that it's a lot earlier than that. But maybe they're just trying to make people feel good. So anyway, there's this, they learn pretty early about resources and wanting to acquire things. Now, what do you think the average age for a kid is to have their first substantive money talk with their parent? Anyone? Oh. There's a killer right there. It's actually 10, for God's sake. But maybe 18. I'm talking to my daughter in college. You could be. But 10 is like the average age, according to some random poll that suits the needs of my talk, where parents have sort of that first really serious talk with their kids about money and resource. And the point is, even that, maybe it's 18, which is even better. I like that. But there's this huge gap between, when they understand about resources and want things versus when we start teaching about money. And I think every parent would agree that learning about money is important. And, I think that, why is it that there's this huge gap? So, I've devoted the last 6 years to trying to build software that would help parents do this easily. And the reason why, and I'm the age I start with my oldest, I'm embarrassed to say, Lynn makes me feel bad, I didn't start till my oldest were 10. So, or 11, 10, 11. And why this huge gap from 5 to 10? Those are all years where they should be practicing, and so, I'm going to tell sort of a little bit about the journey that my family went through and why I started so late. And are there any folks here that have, sort of 10 and below, kids 10 and below? So do you consider yourselves moderately busy? I mean, parents are insanely busy. They are insanely busy. And, very few of us are as organized as Lynn is. And I was one of them because, I failed to start really systematically teaching my kids. I don't know what happened. Like, we woke up one day and said, oh, my God, we have to teach them life skills. Whoa, bummer. Who's going to do that? And they're not doing it in the school. And so, the first thing was to turn that sort of, Dad, I want you to buy that. Dad, buy me that gum. To, turn that into, well, buy it with your own resources. Well, then, so step one is like, they have to have some income. Right? They have to have something of their own money, their own control. And so for us, our first step was, okay, let's have the discussion between mom and dad about, what is legitimate sort of income for a kid of 5. Go out and get a job. Yeah, right. What? 5? Kids 5. Allowance. Allowance, that's, you're just handing over money to the kid. Okay, well, how about making the bed? I make my bed without being paid. Well, actually, you don't make your bed. It's, you just, whatever is appropriate for your family. I think that's what's so important here. But they have to have some resource of their own. And Lynn tells great stories about, ownership is so key. So the first thing was, in our family, it's just the Dwight family, we had a modest allowance for the kids that was roughly equal to their age, which I ended up whacking back for my youngest because he was piling up too much cash. But and so that was just for, sort of, wants, kind of not impulse buys, but to put a governor on the impulse buys and the impulse requests. So give them a resource that they have control over. The next thing was, okay, where do we put this money? With 4 siblings, your sock drawer is a really bad place to put money. Hey, Mom, where'd my money go? Will took it again. Whatever. So that's when the Bank of Dad opened. So the Bank of Dad was created to get rid of thievery. When Quentin, who's my 10-year-old now, finds a quarter in the couch because I get excited that the Niners won, or get upset that Milky Cabrera has been doing steroids, then he brings it to me and says, "Dad, put this in the bank of debt." Right? So I take his money, and he knows what the balance is. And so we created a place to put money, which was a bank of debt. And so originally I kept it on a spreadsheet. And so if they wanted to know, kind of what their balance is, they could come and ask me, just like you, go on Wells Fargo or whatever and look and see what your balance is, so they know a resource. So that turns it around to, hey, I own this money, it's mine. When I'm at the checkout stand, it's not, hey, Dad, can you buy me that? It's, hey, Dad, what's my balance? Do you want to buy that? Yeah, I can afford that. I can buy that. And that's a huge rush for a kid to feel that they own a resource and they can make those decisions. So that's kind of, that's how we started to deal with the impulse spending. And by the way, I got a little tired of them coming to my office, hey, what's my balance? So being a nerd, which apparently nerds are a bad word around here, but we're okay, we're okay.
Stick together.
Yeah, that's right, we gotta stick together. I built a website for them, just sort of, on a weekend, so the kids could come in. Well, this was a real crappy version of the current product, but so I built them a website so they could sign in and see what their balance was, right? And then Mom and Dad could add money or ding them, whatever, through our login. So you got income, you got sort of impulse spending. Okay, well now I want the big Lego set. Well, you don't have enough money for the big Lego set. Okay, now what? Well, you got a plan. You got to look at your income. You got to make a savings plan. So the next thing was have a goal and track that goal. It's a really good discipline to have. So we sort of set up, a way to track those goals and work towards savings, right? And, get crafty. Hey, how about if I wash your car every day? I might get the goal faster, right? So start thinking like an entrepreneur. And Anthony, I'm sure, will tell us all about entrepreneurialism. So we want to spark that, right? Give them something to work for. Toward. And then it's sometimes they want something really expensive, and you actually really want them to have it. So a good example would be my son, oldest son, 20 now, is a musician. And so GarageBand is a fabulous thing on the Mac where they can do recording and all that stuff. And so his drum teacher's you really ought to get him a laptop with GarageBand. So stupidly, all my stories start with how stupid I was and then got slowly smarter. At least that's what my wife tells me. But so I stupidly went out and just bought him a Mac, which is crazy. It's super expensive. Within a couple of months, he actually trashed that machine. I was so furious. I was furious at myself. I was furious at him. And so then, he comes back a couple of months later. It's like, hey, Dad, drum teacher says I need, GarageBand. Can you get me another laptop? I'm like, no. Are you crazy? You just trashed that thing. So that's when the loan was born. So I say, well, I really want my son to play music and be creative. GarageBand, it's an awesome thing. I don't want to take that away. But how about this? I'll give you a loan, and I'm going to garnish your wages. So we're going to take 50% of your allowance, and that's going to go right to paying off this loan. And it takes over a year. It's a long time for a kid. This is almost an infinite amount of time. So you know what? Still has that laptop. He trashed it when it was just me buying stuff. He takes care of it when he's paying for it. So I actually think, this is different for every family. I actually think loans can be a very effective way to teach the value of a dollar. If you see half of your paycheck going out, like it's going to be going out for your mortgage later when you're older, this is an interesting experience to have. Sometimes there are what we call unplanned loans. So it's 3 a.m. Phone rings. Hey, Mr. Dwight, you know where your daughter is? Yeah, she's right down the hall. A little technical difficulty?
I didn't see the audio up. I don't know.
Okay.
Might have to just use the...
Hello? Everyone's pushing me in a different direction. I feel like I'm going to fall off a cliff all of a sudden. So anyway, so then there's sort of the unplanned loan. Get the call in the middle of the night. You know where your daughter is? Yeah, she's right down the hall sleeping. No, she's not, sir. She's at the Stanford campus with your car. So she had just gotten her license. And she forgot to turn on her lights when she started driving through campus. And she got busted. $300 ticket. She didn't have $300. That's what I call an unplanned loan. So, I would rather have her pay that back over a series of months and, repay that debt and have a system in place. The Bank of Dad that's a little more formal. And Lynn has a great quote in her book. It says, numbers don't nag. So the cool thing about numbers is, hey, you did this. It cost $300. It's coming out of your allowance every week. Sorry, and that's it. That's the end of the discussion. Then it moves to sort of, spending against a budget. So just like Lynn did, we would take, certain amounts of spending that we're already doing on the kids' behalf and put them under the kids' control. And so, I like to pick like a category the kid really cares about. My daughter loved clothing. So the process was 3 steps, make a budget. I knew I'd picked the right category when the name of her budget was clothes now with an exclamation point. So that's what she has entered in the system. I demo it all the time. And, make a budget and then, have a conversation. Hey, you gonna wear any underwear? Like you might have forgotten an item. I have the same problem you do. But I remember that crack line. I like that. That's funny. So make a budget, and then we set up like an expense allowance that matched the budget. And I like to do it annually because it's a really good experience to try to meet something out over a long period of time. And then get out of the way. Let her make the decisions. And, as long as the kids aren't buying cigarettes or beer or whatever, then, that's cool. I generally try to not get in their way and have ownership. So it went great the first year, and she did a pretty good job. And then the second year in high school, I think she got invited to a prom or something. And that she decided that a good way to spend her money would be on the Neiman Marcus chiffon gown, which I thought was probably not a great idea. I didn't think she'd wear it again, but what do I know? So I gave my kind advice, which she dismissed, and boom, 80% of her budget toast. And, I'll say that she had to sort of, live within her budget for the rest of the year. And that was better than any lecture I could, ever dream up. Just the fact that she, had agreed to the budget and sort of had to go completely cold turkey for the last 3 months of the school year. She really remembered that. That was a story. You created a story. And, the next thing we kind of moved on to was, okay, how about thinking a little bit longer term for the younger kids, starting to take a little money out of the income source that's coming in and put it towards something like long-term saving, like college. And philanthropy. We got really interested in getting our kids involved in philanthropy, so take a little bit out of that and set that aside. And we sit down, we have a conversation with our kids, how much you've got this income coming in, what percentages do you want to split between the 3? We try not to dictate it, but it's got to be north of 0, Oh, 0.2% to philanthropy. Wow, you're a big guy. And then, we have this account that's accruing over the weeks. And the neat thing about technology is you can have things that remind you. Because remember, we're insanely busy, right? So one of the cool things about technology is, I get an alert every time, Quentin, my 10-year-old, his balance gets to $50, and then we sit down and have a conversation about where we want to donate that money. So, basically, what's really interesting about this, and it's really fun to meet the other panelists, is we all have a lot of the same experiences. I mean, I read 2 books. One was The First National Bank of Dad by David Owen. I read it after I wrote the first version of software. And I'm like, that was deja vu. I just reinvented what that dude invented, 5 years ago. And then just recently I read Lynn's book and I go, oh my God, she's brilliant. I just reinvented what Lynn invented 20 years ago, It's like, well, I'm an idiot. And the nice thing is I've got 5 kids. So even though I started late with my oldest ones, I was able to, have these experiences and then experiment on my youngest one. And what's so nice is now that, we did write the software, which basically the software is just, we call it a virtual family bank. And it's just a way for parents to run a mock bank, if you will, which is real money. And it's just keeping track of balances, just like it describes in Lynn's book. Honestly, I didn't read it beforehand, but it's an awesome book. And I recommend that you read the book. But the point is, I think that we can use, it's so much easier now with Quentin, who grew up from the age of 4 using this first very simply and then, adding more stuff. It's so much easier with him. These habits are just second nature. And it's just so sad that these great techniques, right, that a few people know don't get sort of discovered or get reinvented every time, right? And so I think that the very interesting possibility about P20 and about other technologists on the panel who are, trying to basically bring the power of social media and web technology and mobile technology to make it simpler to reinvent faster. So every parent can feel like they're a genius reinventing a little bit, but let's give them the tools to make it faster. So let's take that, time from, hey, Dad, buy me that, to, hey, I could buy that. Should I buy that? Let's reduce that gap time.